Get ready for your daily dose of WordPress and web development tips, tricks, and insights to help you find success with WordPress. You're listening to WP the Podcast with your hosts, David Blackman and Tim Streifler.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of WP the Podcast, brought to you by WPGears.com. I'm Tim Streifler, and my co-host David Blackman is out for the time being. He'll be back with us soon. He's taking some much-needed time off, so stay tuned for when we're back in our normal routine with both of us on. Should be in the next few episodes. So today we're going to be talking about the difference between avoiding scope creep and nickel and diming your clients. So before we dive into this, let me explain what scope creep is. Essentially, scope creep is when the project scope creeps open, usually because the client is asking for little things. So typically what you do when you are building a website for a client is you will scope out the project and you put that in your contract. You're going to provide these things. It's going to be this many pages, this many products, and this and this and this. And then that is the project scope, and it costs X amount of dollars. Well, what happens quite a bit is a client will think of things later, and they'll say, hey, it would be really cool if we added this WYSIWYG to the homepage. I've seen that on other sites, and I really like it. Can we do that? And, a lot of times your natural tendency is to please the client, and you'd be like, sure, you know what? Like customer service. I want to give you what you want. And so, yeah, I can do that for you. And, it might be a few extra hours. And then the next thing, they're back and saying, hey, I was on this website of one of my competitors and they just added this other cool WYSIWYG thing over here. Is it okay if we add that too? And then you're like, yeah, okay. And the next thing you know you're spending, 10, 15, 20 extra hours doing these added things because they didn't do a good job figuring out what they wanted, and you didn't do a good job planning and helping them through that discovery process. But also you didn't do a good job of pumping the brakes and being able to say, yes, we can do those things for you, but it's going to cost extra because I scoped out the project and had these hours based off of what we had talked about, and I didn't account for this. So I can do that, but that's going to be a few extra hours. So it's going to cost this much additional. And so that's kind of the right way to handle scope creep, is being like, yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. I'd love to do that for you, but it's going to cost extra. And so, then the client has to decide if they really want it, or if it's, something that they just thought of and thought might be cool, but don't really need it. And so, yeah, that's a scope creep. Happens a lot. We've had episodes on scope creep, so I'm not going to dive too much further into that. But I want to talk about the balance between nickel and diming your clients, because there's some things that maybe your client wants to add. Maybe they had just hired a new employee, for example, in the process of you building the website. And so they want to add that to the about page with their other employees. Well, adding one more employee to an already existing about page, in most cases, probably won't take more than a few extra minutes adding it there. And so you could say, hey, we talked about only having your existing employees, so I'm going to have to charge you extra for that. And that's what I would call nickel and diming your clients. A couple episodes back, or maybe it was yesterday's episode, I talked about I had recently purchased a new home, and my wife and I are doing some remodeling, and we've had some good experience with different contractors and then some bad experience with contractors. And so we've had contractors where it's like, you want to do this one little thing here, and oh, we forgot to tell you we want to paint this door. Okay, well, that's going to be an extra $100. It's like, really? That's like 5 minutes of work. You're already painting the other ones, like you have the right paint, opposed to a different contractor that says, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, no problem. That's just a few extra minutes. We'll take care of that for you. And so there's that balance of not letting the client take advantage of you and providing a good service to make your client happy, because you don't want the client to feel like you're nickel and diming them and, just kind of being a jerk and trying to get more money out of them. But at the same time, you don't want them to walk all over you and, you end up spending a lot more time doing things that were never talked about, were never accounted for when putting together the project scope. And so there's that balance there. And so you have to kind of find out where that line is. And where I draw the line is how long it's actually going to take. So for example, if it's going to take me 15 minutes or less, I'll usually do it for the client. But here's the caveat is I will tell them, sure, we can do that for you. However, just so you know, this wasn't something that we accounted for when building the project scope and figure out how many hours everything is going to take. And so normally this would cost extra. And so essentially what you're doing is you're telling them, hey, I'm going the extra mile for you. Normally I have to charge for this, but I want to keep you happy. And so then they appreciate it. And you have to say it in a way, you don't want to make it say like you're trying to make yourself out to be the hero type of thing. You want to, be honest and straightforward, and not seem like you're trying to make yourself, look really good. But that way they understand that, oh, okay, doing extra things takes extra time, and it's not just flipping a switch. It does take extra time. And so then they appreciate it. And then in the future, they're probably less likely to bring other stuff up unless it's something that they really do need. And so you're able to help them out, keep them happy on something that really is a quick thing without them, without it leading to more things down the road to where they are, asking every day for additional things that weren't talked about and weren't built into the project scope. And so that's kind of where I draw the line. You kind of have to figure out where that line is for you. I think that's a good place to start, is kind of like that. Okay, if it's going to, take just a few minutes, then sure, I'll do it, but let them know so that it doesn't keep happening. So yeah, that's where I draw the line between avoiding scope creep and then nickel and dime your customers, because you don't want your clients to feel like you're just trying to get more money out of them, and they feel like they're taking advantage of, but you don't want to be taken advantage of either. So I hope that was helpful. Scope creep is something we could talk about for a lot of time. There's definitely no exact science between avoiding scope creep. You kind of have to figure it out as you go along, but hopefully some of these tips that we've talked about in this episode and past episodes are helpful to kind of prepare you from essentially getting taken advantage of by your client. So tune into tomorrow's episode. We're going to talk about some more topics similar to today's. We're going to talk about being assertive and direct with web design clients in order to close the deal. So tune in. It's going to be a good episode. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.
We've come to the end of today's episode of WP the Podcast. Join us tomorrow for more daily tips and strategies designed to help you run your WordPress business toward success. Remember to subscribe to WP the Podcast so you can stay up to date with each episode. And don't forget to rate and review us. We'll see you again tomorrow right here on WP the Podcast.